Well, great timing. This female golden-tailed woodpecker has just hopped back into view. We took a bit of a gamble. They are such awesome little birds that we don't get to show you that often. But thankfully she appears to be, or at least she was, really enjoying feeding on that little weeping wattle tree. And Brian has still managed to keep an eye on it. It's now moved across onto a marula. It's a lot of bush in the way, and I don't have a monitor, so I'm not sure how it's going, but Brian says he's on top of things. And there, it's all finally. They can be quite hard birds to distinguish in the field, so what I'm going to do is get my book out. This could be another one for the bird list, I think. I haven't had a confirmed sighting of a golden-tailed woodpecker, I don't think, in all my time with Wild Earth with you guys. So that's good news. And Susie, that's something different, I guess. We'll claim it. So you'll see they all look quite similar, but there are slight variations between them. And the female here, you may have noticed, I hope some of you got some screenshots, has the black and white dotted forehead with the red crown at the back. And it could, I guess, have been confused with the male bearded woodpecker. But if you look back at any screenshots that you may have got, the bearded woodpecker has a barred chest, and the golden-tailed woodpecker has a streaked chest. So a very different chest. And I hope you guys enjoyed that view. Very good. And well done to all of you who did well in Brent's quiz, and to those of you who didn't, not to worry. It's not a major competition, but it is important to test ourselves to make sure we keep growing and learning. So this is Cheetah Cutline, it's our eastern boundary. Until we find the next interesting little animal or anything that we shall call you back for. Welcome back, and I didn't stump you. Someone did get it right. A mouse purr was correct with Sharp's Grysbok. So now I've got my thinking grass, Thermida triandra, or Natal red grass, and now I'm trying to think about what I can find to catch you guys out now. This is a challenge that I'm taking very, very seriously. So let's see what we can find out here. No more easy questions for you today. I'm going to put my pondering on hold for a second to give you guys an update on those 3 new lions we saw on the sunset safari last night, the Shimungwe pride, and Joan from England was wondering if there's any updates. And as Scott mentioned earlier, quite often what our weekly touch rugby game is, it gives us a chance to have some downtime with other guides and a little bit of exercise and fun, and obviously all of us interested in the bush, the most commonly spoke about topic is what animals have you been seeing? And Joan was wondering if there was a nice specific update about the Shimungwes, and there was actually from the reserve to the north of us. Some of the guys from the Manyuleti come down for these touch rugby games, and from the head range at that side we found out that they have actually crossed into the Manyuleti, and they are at a little series of rocky outcrops called the Dixie Koppies.
Koppie is a nice proper South Africanism. A koppie is basically like a little hill that's made up mostly of rocks. And it comes from the Afrikaans word kop, which is head. So basically like a whole bunch of heads, rocks on top of each other. So they were last seen this morning around the Dixie koppies. Moving into the Manunetti is probably not the best idea for the Shimongwe Pride. They have a higher line density there than we have here. So it'll be very interesting to see how long they last up there. Camera work. I have a nice question for you guys. Now, I've got a feeling this isn't quite as difficult as the Facebook question, but we'll give it a go anyway. What do we have here? So we can see a little bit of bone, quite a lot of hair, and actually amazingly enough, have a look at that. You can definitely see quite a lot of white hair on there. Still a little bit of skin in the middle.
It's a little bit close.
A little bit close. How's that?
That's good.
So I'm just gonna, so you can see very, very white hair. Still attached to a piece of skin. I wonder what that could be. Now let's go have another look at what else is in there. So we can see we've got some little bone fragments. And there might be a little bit of a trick in this question. So I've had to resort to trickery and skullduggery to try catch you out. So let's see if there are people that are feeling very smart today that might catch me out with my tomfoolery and skullduggery. We're moving along the eastern boundary at the moment. It is quite a common place where we do find tracks of animals moving in and out of Djuma. So even though we did check it this morning, it's always good to check it again, especially on a cool day like this. You never know. Leopard and lion might have been quite active during the day because it hasn't got warm at all today. So fingers crossed that we've had a little bit of movement across this eastern boundary. If not, we shall head to the northern boundary and westwards. Even the birds are quiet today. we noticed some very interesting elephant behavior this morning, with that nice big breeding herd of elephant that Mr. Wrinkly Bottom is part of. And I mentioned that they will quite often, oh, got to watch, drive on the road always helps, they quite often will bypass the Djuma Dam and go straight to the little pumped pan in front of Gallagher and bigger distances to try find clean water. Kathleen, that's a very 200-300 meters that the elephants do to find that neither of those are correct. So the tracking is not looking wonderful. The sunset is looking a little bit better, changing a little bit. So even though we've got this quite overcast day, that wonderful African sunshine is beating through. So we've got a few more 100 meters to do of the eastern boundary before we head north. I'm just going to have a quick chat to Scotty, see what area.
It's a wonderful still evening. And the Franklin are really going for it now, but it's quite typical at this stage of the evening for them to communicate with other Franklin. And isn't it a beautiful sky out to the western horizon? And let's just have a minute or so of absolute silence. So put your feet up and enjoy. Well, sadly, whatever birds were calling were quite far off, so you may have only just got a few very faint sounds from them. But let's carry on. A combination of stopping and starting, I think, will be a good combination of being able to cover ground, searching a little bit, and also stopping and listening along the way. So we'll use two different theories and just combine them. Some guides are under the impression that the faster you drive, the more animals you will see. And that theory can work on certain occasions. It's uncomfortable, but it can work. It's something a lot of guides, especially guides that are new in the industry, do not realize, is that when you're sitting in the front seat, it's very comfortable. But on some of these large game viewers, with 3 rows of seats all elevated, there's a lot of leverage, so especially the people on the back row are getting flung around, and that is a very useful piece of advice. I'm not sure why, but for some reason guests seem to think that the back row is the best because it's the highest, so they might be able to see more. That is not the case, so don't be fooled. And it is by far the most bumpy. And it's quite funny as a guide to see guests fighting over the back seat, which is basically the worst seat in the vehicle. So don't fall into that trap if and when you do come on safari. It's much better to sit up close to your guide that you can hear, speak to and listen to. And also it's the most comfortable ride. Excuse me. Okay, well, we've been chatting a lot about the Nkahuma Pride's successful buffalo kill, and apologies if you're getting bored of it, but it's still exciting news for us here. And it's also exciting news for Sarah, one of our younger viewers, just 17 years old, and she was also there to witness the kill. And she would like to know, how old was I when I saw my first kill? I just need to get out my abacus to work out how old I would have been. It was in my first year of guiding, which was in 2008, which was 7 years ago, so I was about 22 or 23 years old. I'm approaching the 30s. Rapidly, at the end of the year, I will convert into a 30-year-old humanoid. Anyway, I was 23, Sarah, there and thereabouts, and it was a wonderful, wonderful morning we had spent following with a young female leopard who was beginning to have to fend for herself. Her mother was no longer tolerating her at her own kills, and we had been following her for most of the morning. There was a bateleur that I was hoping on showing you, but it decided to fly off. Anyway, the female leopard had been hunting the whole morning. It was an overcast morning and it was in winter, and we kept following her, and then she would go to sleep on like termite mound or up a tree. It happened on a number of occasions, and then because we were already late for breakfast, we kept saying, well, if she stays sleeping, we will leave. After 5 or 10 minutes of her dozing, we would start the car in order to try and head back towards breakfast, and then she would start moving again. And this happened about 4 or 5 times until it was 12 o'clock, midday. We were 3 hours late for breakfast. Breakfast usually at around 9 o'clock, 9:30, you would finish drive. So we had already been out until midday, but thankfully it was overcast, so we were kept nice and cool. And eventually she stumbled upon a female impala, and the impala, it must have been summer months because the impala had just given birth to a youngster, and she was separated from the herd, and this female leopard then proceeded from midday, 12 o'clock, to stalk up to this female impala that had just given birth, and eventually she did manage to catch the young lamb that had just been given birth to. So a little bit sad, obviously, but it was a momentous occasion for her. It was the first time we had ever seen her make a kill, and it was obviously a big step forward to know that she can take down her own prey, and that was my first kill that I ever saw. And I can actually show you a photograph of that happening. Let me take a quick look here. It shouldn't take too long. Oh no, it will. Well, what I'll do is I'll get the photograph ready and show you all a little bit later. But I got fortunate with a lucky photo. It was an unlucky impala, but it allowed me a lucky photograph. And I'm not sure, Brian, what's up ahead there? Have you seen anything? I thought I heard something rustling in the grass there, but I have no idea what it could be. Oh, look at this. Please don't fly. There's a tiny little bird that I always try and show you, and now we've got this new camera with super zoom, you should be able to get nice and close to it, and you might be lurched forward as Brian hits the super zoom button, so don't be alarmed. And that is a tiny little blue waxbill. It's fully grown. It's a tiny bird, and it's off. But I do believe you did get a good view of it, so that's great news, and it could be another bird to add to the list for some of you. And isn't it really, really pretty? Now the thing is with birds, and there's a lot of them, that because they are so small, unless you get very close to them, it would have just looked like a brown blob from here. But if we can somehow get the camera onto them quick enough, you really begin to appreciate how beautiful they are. And it's merely their size that causes us to overlook a lot of animals, and not necessarily their beauty. And that's something to remember and to open your mind up to. You find a lot of the larger animals are fortunate in that because they are so big, it's easy to appreciate their beauty. But the smaller ones you need to either zoom in onto, or if out on safari, be sure that you are well practiced with your binoculars before you come out, so that you can quickly find the animals. It's actually a lot harder than people would realize using binoculars. Well, that's what I've learned over the years of guiding. So again, if you are ever coming out on safari, do not sit on the back row unless you are forced to, and make sure you practice with your binoculars before you come out here. Well, I'm very happy to hear that Angela is breaking the rules at work and watching Safari Live with us, and she said she would love to have been able to put up her feet and enjoy that sunset, but she's multitasking, and quite a few of my friends say they enjoy starting their day watching Safari Live. It seems to ease them into the chaos of the work environment, and I'm glad you're sneaking it into, Angela. Let's just hope your boss isn't watching as well. Life in between. And James is interested to know, what do we do? What's your average day at a lodge as a guide, and what differences are there now being presenters for Safari Live? It's a great question, James. A lot will depend on the individual camp you're working at. At camps where I've worked at in the past, your main role has been to guide the guests. So that is your fundamental role within that camp. Okay, well, there are lion tracks. Because the light is so low, I'm battling to tell how fresh they are. And when assessing how fresh tracks are, it's better not to just look at one individual track which may not have been disturbed. It's better to carry on walking a long distance and checking to see that they are in fact fresh. So using one sample wouldn't be good, but the one track that I did go down and have a closer look at did appear to be quite fresh. So maybe, just maybe, there's going to be some lion around the next corner. So yeah, a midday snooze is often part of the agenda, James. And your typical rotation at most camps will be 6 weeks on, where you will work possibly every single day within that 6-week period, and then 2 weeks off. So it can be quite long work rotations. Well, there are some incredible colors coming from our western horizon. And I'm just going to let Brian level off the camera quickly, and then he is going to take you on a tour of the beauty that lies ahead of us. And while he does that, I'm just going to jump off the vehicle and take a closer look at these tracks on the road here. It's a more sandy area. So enjoy the sunset and the views, and I am going to be back on the vehicle in a second. You may have heard of Shelley's Franklin calling there. Well, I'm sure you're enjoying the beautiful sight out to the west, and the colors continue to intensify into some very rich colors. Oh, there are also some pearl-spotted owlets calling. We could hear ringing out. I can't work out whether these lion tracks are very fresh, but they are certainly worth following, and they're heading down the road in the same direction as us. And we've just got a question through from Cheryl. I wonder if it's my mother. If it is, hi Mom. If it's not, hello Cheryl. And she would like to know whether the nest in this tree is from any specific bird, and it is. It's in all likelihood from red-billed buffalo weavers that build community nests. And as far as I can remember, that is what was nesting in there, but I could be wrong. Interestingly, they are often on the north and west facing branches of trees, which get the most evening sunlight, so that they've got a nice warm and cozy home to sleep in. So it can be a useful indicator when moving through the bush. A lot of birds that build community nests will often nest on the north and western parts of that tree, so a useful natural compass. Well, I think the sun has just dipped below the horizon, and even though we can't see it, we can see the colors beginning to fade. So I think the best has come and gone. So we shall continue down this road called Leadwood Road towards wherever these lions have ended up. Now we are approaching our southern boundary, and their general direction is south. It looks like just one lion. And from the southeastern corner of Djuma, we are going to send you to the northwestern corner with Brent at a beautiful waterhole. Enjoy.
So welcome back. Unfortunately, it is still quite quiet out here. We've been sitting here listening at Sydney's waterhole, hoping for an alarm call, a herd of elephants. All we have is some hippos in the water, but they are not as many as they were. It looks like they might have moved to another dam. I can just see a couple in between those dead trees. Hi, Sarah, who's 17 from Ohio, Sarah asked a question to Scott about how old he was when he witnessed his first hunt and kill, and to Scott and myself. Well, Sarah, I'm actually just trying to think now. I think my first hunt and kill that I can remember seeing, I must have been 4 or 5 years old, and it was 2 male cheetah killing a baby impala, and they didn't actually kill with it, they played with it for about half an hour before killing it. And cheetah do that quite often, especially with baby impala, but I think that's the first one I can remember start to finish. I think next Sarah's first was that buffalo kill we had on the safaris last week. Well, my first lion and buffalo, I must have been about 8 or 9 start to finish the whole kill. So I've been very lucky though. I have lived the majority of my child and adult life in the bush, so I've been very, very lucky with that. So I've seen on average probably a few more kills than most, and I've spent a lot of time with lions and leopards and wild dogs. I think the most kills I've ever seen in one day was 9 or 10, and that was wild dogs killing baby impala. So baby impala take a big knock in that couple of months when they're just born. They are sort of snacks for everything: lion, hyena, leopard, cheetah, wild dog. Or am I missing something? Even jackal occasionally. But I've been very lucky and very blessed that I have grown up in the areas that I have, and I've been able to continue after that working in such amazing areas all over Africa. So I'm very, very lucky, and I'm quite sure there's probably a bit of debate whether is it 4 years old, should you be watching that sort of death, so to speak. But I feel, I mean, the way we were brought up and where we were brought up, animals killing animals was natural as walking across the road, and we would often be out on game drive and see things like that, whether it be a snake eating a mouse or lion eating a buffalo. So it all depends, I think, on the circumstance, and I don't think I could have ever wished or chosen for a better way to grow up than that. And I'm very thankful to my parents for being a little bit more adventurous than most and living in the middle of the bush for the majority of my life. But we're going to continue on now. Not much happening here at Sydney's, and see what else we can find. Very tricky one, and I had to get a little bit creative to catch you guys out. And Gilly says, I said skullduggery and tomfoolery. Gilly said I'm not as good as words as you are, Gilly. But it was a little bit of a tricky one. It was dung. It was actually tomduggery and skullfoolery. So it was quite a tricky one. It was actually a lion dung, but we were on a fire break, and what happens at this time of the year on a fire break is quite often that they are mowed to keep the grass short to try stop runaway fires. So it was lion dung that had been mowed by a tractor and a big mowing blade. So I apologize. It was a little bit too difficult, but anyone who did think lion dung, you were correct. And the giveaway there was the fact that there was such large pieces in the dung. So those large pieces of bone and that bit of white hair, which is probably from an impala's belly by the looks of things, attached to the skin. With leopard, it's generally the pieces of bone and fragments and stuff in there would be a lot smaller. So there was an opportunity there to get the lion dung part. And sometimes lion dung, especially very old lion dung like that, can look like that even without being driven over by a mower, when elephants walk over it and kick it around, or buffalo. So sorry about that, guys. I just couldn't resist. The little imp on my shoulder got the better of me. So we are very lucky in the amount of different animals we see regularly on these drives, and one of them we don't is baboons. And Mavis was wondering, do we see baboons in the Sabi Sands, or do they occur here? Very much so, Mavis. The baboon concentrations are a bit higher, closer to the big rivers around the Sand River and the Sabi River, quite often because there's a lot more fig trees there, and so there's a higher percentage of fruit. I have seen baboons a couple of times around Arathusa, but we do definitely occur, and I've actually seen a very big, when I first started I saw a very big group on quarantine clearings, but they seem to move in quite big areas, and you'll probably find in the marula season, when we've got lots of fruit around, that those baboons might move into this area. But we do, Mavis, and hopefully we'll see them quite soon. It's 10. Well, I wouldn't say I cheated, MJ. I would say I got creative. There's a big difference between cheating. So my plan now is that I had a chat to the guys from Arathusa. Shadow and Sindila have not been seen for a couple of days, and I'm hoping that she might have moved across into Djuma. So I'm going to check the area around Impala Plains at this time of the day. Maybe she might be moving down one of the roads. So fingers crossed, because I think we have now done the majority of the eastern, actually the whole eastern boundary, the whole northern boundary, and about a quarter of the south rather than later. So there were, at some point, elephants here. As we can see here. Now it's very interesting, this particular acacia tree can grow to a really fantastically large, big tree in areas where there aren't elephants. But it's called an acacia gerardi, or a red thorn, and the reason it's named a red thorn is on the young branches you quite often notice quite a red coloring, and you can see the elephants very rarely let them get a bit taller than me before they keep them pruned, and that's why elephants are so important in the system. There's a lot of species they stop from getting big. They actually almost farm them, so on their migrations and false alarm, on their migrations and movements, they'll stop by these certain groves of trees or certain individual trees. So if you look at the size of the trunk down there, this tree should probably be a much bigger tree, a much taller tree, but again it's mostly shorter than me and kept that way by the elephants. And one of the reasons for this is they're continuously fighting to produce these nice young succulent branches which the elephants find so tasty. Another tree that an elephant does it to quite regularly out here is the round-leaf teak. And so very interesting that some places you find incredibly large red thorns, but in the Sabi Sands they're always kept pretty well maintained by the ellies. And now, since we have this here with us, this was probably fed on quite, I'm even tempted to say last night, rather than early today. There's no wetness on the exposed bark, or the exposed pith, and even under here it's dried out quite a lot. So this is by no means fresh elephant feedings, but you can see how long the leaves might stay green for. So it can be a couple of days, but you can see they're starting to dry up, and they'll starting to fall off if I touch them. So they become very, very brittle, and a lot of that moisture is disappearing very quickly. And here you can see these incredible weapons of thorns they have, and that doesn't stop an elephant at all. He'll munch straight through that. The other giveaway that it wasn't this afternoon is the fact that the cars have driven over all the tracks, so we can't even see an elephant track here. All we can see is vehicle tracks. I'm glad I'm not an elephant and don't have to eat thorns on a daily basis. It would be quite uncomfortable. I thought I heard an alarm call, but it was really faint and really far away, and that is in the general direction we are moving. So we're going to keep moving that way, and hopefully when we get a bit closer, I'm going to switch off and listen again. It was really faint. My gut would be that it was possibly a kudu rather than a nyala, which is deep bark, sort of bo. And kudu are probably one of the more accurate alarm calls to listen to. Impala sometimes get confused in alarm call. It smells, and I've even seen an impala alarm called a strange shaped termite mound before. But with kudu, their eyesight is generally very good and they're quite accurate. So when they do alarm call, they have almost certainly seen a predator. It is quite a long way away, and I'm not 100% sure. It could have just been another noise, an elephant breaking a branch or something, but still worth going to have a look in that area. So the reason I've popped my lights on and I'm not using my spotlight yet is that there's still enough light that I'll be able to see an animal quite clearly, but just in case a leopard or a lion has walked along the road, I'm hoping that I might be able to pick up the tracks in the light. This very soft dull light, if I turn the lights off, is incredibly difficult to see tracks in. So I'm just trying to give us a little bit of an advantage, using my headlights to try throw a shadow over the tracks. And this isn't ideal. Preferably we wouldn't want such a bright white light, but it's the best we've got, and this one's just a little bit dull, and we're trying to see the sort of shadows that the track would make. And so we've got to hope that if a lion and leopard does walk, they walk in nice soft sand, so I can see the imprints and the shadows that they make quite clearly. As it gets quite dark, Vince from Wisconsin is wondering what time does it get completely dark here in the evening. Vince, I think tonight's going to probably be a bit earlier than it has been. With this cloud cover, not a lot of ambient light around, I probably guess it's going to get very dark before 6 o'clock. Normally it's around 6 and just after 6 that it's really pitch black. But it is going to start getting earlier now as we move closer towards the summer months. Those of you who've been watching regularly will quite often noticed we've had a couple of really misty mornings with that low mist sitting in the valleys, and Genevieve from New York was wondering if the conditions are ever correct for dew. She said she has seen what she thought was raindrops on orb spider's web, but she hasn't seen any dew. Genevieve, we do get dew. During the dry season we do get less, but on those misty mornings we do have quite a lot of dew. And during the summer months there is dew everywhere, and if you had to take a walk into the grass, your pants would actually become completely soaking. So we do have dew for most of the year. At this time of the year it's not as apparent unless we have one of those nice beautiful misty mornings, and then there is a lot of dew around. But in the summer, almost every morning we've got a lot of dew. And that's one of the reasons, specifically in summer, lions and leopards are really fond of walking down the roads, because they don't like getting wet grass in their face as much as we don't like getting wet grass in our pants. See, the light has dropped very quickly, reaching for my spotlight. So while we start perusing this area, we're going to cross across to Scotty to see how he's been going on those leopard tracks.
Welcome back, and apologies to hear that Brent has been playing a bit of foul play on the quizzes, and very naughty of him to incorporate tractors into the list of things that could be messing with the dung. But at least you are all now wisening up to Brent's sneaky ways, and there's only a limit to how much longer he will keep you caught out, and I'm sure sooner or later some of you will be teaching him a lesson or two. We are on our southern boundary. We've had no further luck with the tracks and are now getting ready to go into night mode. So I'm going to get out the trusty spotlight that we'll use to try and help us find animals. It's quite easy using a spotlight because you can just look for the reflection of the animal's eyes. And I will just shine the spotlight quickly from side to side. You don't have to really go through with a fine tooth comb. It can be quite quick because the eyes will reflect immediately, and therefore you can shine around quite quickly from side to side. And depending on what animal we find, if it's a nocturnal animal whose eyes are developed for seeing in the dark, we will continue to shine the spotlight on it. But if it's an animal basically like a herbivore or any of the daytime animals, we will avoid shining the spotlight on it in case we leave it blinded and there's a leopard waiting around the next corner. We wouldn't like to leave any of the herbivores in that scenario. Now, I have just remembered a really interesting update that I apologize for not letting you know a little bit earlier on. Some of you who were watching yesterday's sunset safari may have remembered that Karula was seen briefly at the Buffelshoek waterhole, and from there she headed north into Buffelshoek. And she was seen later last night mating with an unknown male leopard. Well, he's not unknown, he's known, but he's very, very nervous. And that's because he's from the Manyaleti Reserve, which does not have the same amounts of vehicles practicing the same behavior as we do out here, and therefore whenever it sees a vehicle it runs away. At night it seems to relax a little bit more, and I found that common with leopard, who are skittish. They tend to be a little bit more relaxed under cover of darkness, even when you do shine a spotlight on them. So a few brief visuals of them were seen, and great to hear that Karula is mating. And to be honest, I think she has given birth to a litter in the last few months that was lost before anyone got to see any of those cubs. So that's my personal theory. The fact that she last gave birth in December last year means that, and lost her cubs also in late December last year, means that she's quite long overdue to give birth. Their gestation period is only about 3 months, just over about 100 to 110 days. And female leopards will often come into season very quickly after losing their cubs to try and get the next generation out. And I strongly feel that she may have given birth in an area but lost her cubs to, who knows, male leopard, hyena, lion, pythons, and now she's mating again. So hopefully in the next 3 months some cubs will be popping out. So that's exciting news. He's a beautiful big male leopard with a very distinctive notch out of his right ear. So that's some exciting news for Karula, and I'm sure a lot of you will be happy to hear that update. Sadly, she still is in Buffels Hook though, and she was seen with him again, I think, this afternoon. Well, always nice to hear new names coming through on the questions, and this evening a new name for me is Denny from Georgia. And if it is your first time watching, why don't you let us know? And it's always great to know that there are more people joining the safaris. Denny would like to know if there's any jackal around, and there are indeed not very many populations in the Sabi Sands relative to other areas that I've worked in. And what's interesting about within the Sabi Sands is it's mainly the side striped jackal, which isn't as widely spread and as common as the black-backed jackal, but we see them here more commonly than the black-backed jackal. They look quite similar. The main distinguishing feature is that the white-tailed mongoose, the side-striped jackal, has a white tip on the end of its tail, whereas the black-backed jackal lacks that white tip. So that's the easiest way to distinguish them. And we have seen a couple around, so keep tuning in, Denny, and you will get to see the side-striped jackal, and if you're lucky, the black-backed. But I think because there's such high predator numbers within the reserve, larger predators, there's no space for those little jackal. Now, we usually look at these birds during the day, but we'll have a quick look at it now because their colors just are so beautiful. And I'm fairly certain it's going to be fast asleep. It may even have its eyes closed. I cannot look through my binoculars and shine the spotlight at the same time. And you can see its ruffled up feathers gently blowing in this cool breeze. A lilac-breasted roller, and its eyes are open. That's probably because we are right here, but we don't want to disturb it for too long, so we will continue on. But just couldn't resist showing you a glimpse of that very pretty bird. got a question through from Judith in North Carolina, and it comes through at a great time because she's asking if there's any birds that will build multiple nests near a waterhole. And there are indeed. The weaver birds are one of those. And these are called village weavers, the ones that are responsible for building these nests. They are no longer inhabited, but make sure to tune in during the summer months, November and December, and we'll see a hive of activity on these trees as they intricately weave these nests out of long blades of grass. And isn't it incredible how just with their beak they can weave such complex structures? The holes are entrance holes are at the base of these nests, and imagine trying to weave that with your hands tied behind your back with just your mouth, because that's what they're doing. I guess they can use their feet occasionally, but it's mainly just their beaks. The weaver birds are a good example of that, Judith. There's nothing else happening at the waterhole though, other than a bat flying around, but that would be impossible to show you. Come on, nocturnal critters, where are you hiding? One day we're going to get lucky and see a porcupine. They are such cool animals. And interestingly, they've got ears like humans, which fascinated me. Very similar shape to a human ear. And I look forward to sharing that moment with all of you. Like I said, it's just a matter of time before we see one of those. A pangolin would also be a good one. They're not strictly nocturnal, but that's another very rare animal that we could see here. Now, some of you may have noticed the trackers who sit on the front of the vehicles. There's a specially designed seat that's on the hood of the vehicle, and that is the tracker's office, and allows them to see a good vantage of the roads. And it's the guide or the game ranger who drives the vehicle. Now, it's an important team that work together in order to show their guests a great stay. And one of our viewers, Gert, has done some research on different lodges, and he says a lot of the lodges will advertise that they have good trackers in the Greater Kruger National Park. And Gert would like to know the kind of differences between being a tracker and being a guide. And it's a great question, Gert. A lot of the trackers are often local people, and they have become the best trackers because of their lifestyles. A lot of the older trackers who pioneered this industry when the safari industry started becoming popular and the need for trackers to find animals was created, local people who had skill in tracking down their own livestock who may have been lost, and simply from spending hours and hours immersed out in wilderness areas like this, where they would herd their cattle and goats, they became extremely in touch with nature. And not only that, but like I said, they had the art of being able to track down animals that have strayed from the herd, lost animals. And this art of tracking can be applied on any animal as long as there's tracks on the ground. So whether you're tracking a goat or a leopard, it's still the art of noticing these very slight differences in the soil where the animals have moved. And we are very fortunate that in this area of South Africa we have got some of the best trackers, not just in Africa but in the world. So it is rightfully so that they do send through these, or that lodges will advertise that they do have very good trackers, but it's a very different role to that of being a guide. A tracker basically cannot speak a word of English, and he can still perform his job well with very little or no interaction with the guests, because his job is to track down and find animals for the guest to view, and for the guide to then narrate and explain to his guests. So you will find a lot of lodges where trackers are not necessarily very vocal, and also may not be able to speak the language very well, but their job is extremely well done in terms of finding animals. Now guides, on the other hand, it's critical that they can speak English so that they can communicate with their guests, and it's, I guess, it's a very different role, and there's a lot of trackers whose English is good enough to become a guide, but they simply don't want the responsibilities attributed to being a guide. For example, talking for the whole 3-hour game drive to the guests. A lot of trackers could think of nothing worse than that, and a lot of them also prefer to go home and have dinner with their friends after work and not have to sit with the clients. So it's a very, very different job role, being a tracker or a guide, although a lot of trackers will develop into guides if they desire. There's more responsibility on the guide's shoulders than the tracker's shoulders, there's no doubt about that. So that kind of, I guess, gives you a rough idea as to the differences between guides and trackers, but it is important to realize that they're a very important team, and relationships between you and your tracker are critical. And it's common that guides will be assigned with a tracker, that they then build a relationship, work on the same leave cycle, so they are always together. You don't chop and change with different sets of guests and different trackers. It's important to build that relationship. I hope that answers your question, Gert. And the little update on Karula has spiked some interest from some of the viewers, and Lisa has asked whether or not Karula's too old to be mating at 11. Certainly not. I think she could mate easily until she's 15 and possibly a few years older than that. There have been leopard in the Sabi Sands documented to live to the age of over 20. But anywhere over 15 would be a very good innings for a female, and it's possible for her to give birth up until that point. And then Kay has asked, what is the name of this leopard that she has been seen mating with? He doesn't have a name because he's very seldom seen up in Buffalo's Hook. They just refer to him as the skittish male that they occasionally see from time to time. But who knows, he may be named if he gets seen more often, but for now he is just known as the skittish male of Buffalo's Hook. Well, sadly our time has come to a close, and we always don't like saying goodbye, but look forward to the sunrise safari with you tomorrow, and I hope you all have a good day or night depending on where you are in the world. A big thanks to Brian on camera today, and also to Tara and VM, who were in the final control room this afternoon. We're going to send you over to Brent so he can say goodbye, and look forward to seeing you on the next safari.
Welcome back, guys. Sorry, I just spotted some eyes. Andrew, please hold this for me. Exactly where I was shining, a little bit higher, a little bit to the right. So right there.
Okay.
I just spotted some eyes very briefly. I wasn't sure what it was. I thought it might be a civet, but it's disappeared. Wait, there it is. A little bit to the right. Left. A little bit, there we go, a little bit more left. Oh no, it's a duiker. Just looked. There's a little, you see that eye there? It's a little grey duiker. Shame we're not going to keep the light on there. So guys, as we coming to the end of this sunset safari, I've had a lot of fun. I hope you have as well. Even though it is quiet, there are so many fascinating things out in the African bush, and today we got a chance to look at some of the smaller things. And a lot of you said I cheated with one of my quizzes. I think I got creative. You know, potato. Witzer says I should have to wash dishes for that quiz. We've already established that I don't do dishes, unfortunately. I do many things, but dishes is not one of them. I can cook, but not do dishes. But anyway, thanks very much for joining us on the Sunset Safari. I had a lot of fun with you guys and really appreciated all the questions and incredible participation in the quizzes, which makes it even more fun for us. And I hope you guys enjoyed it, and well done. I mean, 2 really difficult quizzes today that you guys managed to come to the answers with. That Rus Gwenzii this morning, or the thorny Kari or spiny Rus, and then I nearly caught myself out there, the Sharps Grijsbok. So really well done, and I'm really excited to see what's going to be out there tomorrow morning on the Sunset Safari. Just to let you guys know, so you don't get a big fright, I am going to be making my way on a little holiday up to northern Zambia from tomorrow, and you're going to have a really exciting combination of new presenters on the Sunset Safari tomorrow. So as far as I know, you're going to have Jamie and Steph. So great to have Steph back, and always, and I'm sure you guys will give Jamie a big welcome and look after her on her first official after interview drive here at Wild Earth. So it's been really great, and as I said, I hope to see you all on the Sunrise Safari, and have a wonderful evening or morning or day wherever you are in the world. And for the last few seconds, we're going to listen to the stillness of the African night.